I'm just filling in for my friend, she said, nervously smoothing the apron that didn't quite fit her frame. She had an emergency. The man at the corner table looked up slowly, and for a fraction of a second, the world seemed to tilt. Ethan Cross had trained himself never to react negotiations. Hostile takeovers, ruthless boardrooms had carved discipline into his bones. But the moment his eyes met hers, that discipline shattered. It was her. Lena Hart. The cafe noise faded into a dull hum as memories rushed in uninvited. College hallways smelling of old books and cheap coffee. A girl sitting by the window, sunlight catching in her hair as she scribbled words no one else ever got to read. The girl he admired from a distance, too busy building a future to risk distracting himself with feelings, and now she stood in front of him, holding a notepad, unaware that she had just walked into the quiet center of his world. Is everything okay, sir? She asked, misreading his silence as irritation. Yes, Ethan said quickly, lowering his gaze to the menu, though he already knew it by heart. Just coffee, black. She nodded and turned to leave, but something in her posture stopped him. There was a carefulness to her movements, a guardedness that hadn't been there before. Life had touched her hard. As she walked away, Ethan clenched his jaw. He had spent months coming to this cafe, drawn by a familiarity he hadn't fully understood until now. He had convinced himself it was the quiet, the anonymity. But it had been her all along, even when she hadn't been here. When Lena returned with his coffee, she placed it down gently, her fingers brushing the rim. Here you go. Thank you, he said, then hesitated. You don't usually work here, do you? She gave a small, apologetic smile. No, I'm just helping out today. My friend couldn't make it, and I didn't want her to get in trouble. That's kind of you. She shrugged. It's easier to help others than yourself. The words lingered between them, heavier than they should have been. Lena seemed to realize it too because she laughed softly, brushing it off. Anyway, let me know if you need anything else. But she didn't walk away immediately this time. Something about him, his calm presence, the way he listened instead of looking through her, made her pause. You come here often? She asked, surprising herself. Yes, Ethan replied. Every Thursday? Routine guy? She teased, something like that. She smiled, and for a moment, he saw the girl from his memories. Then the bell over the cafe door rang, and she was pulled away again. Ethan sat there long after his coffee grew cold, watching her move between tables, listening to the soft apologies she offered when she made small mistakes. The way customers seemed to relax around her. She didn't belong to this place, yet she brought warmth to it effortlessly. When the cafe finally slowed, Lena approached his table again. Would you like a refill? On the house first day mistakes? I didn't notice any mistakes. She raised an eyebrow. You're either very kind or very distracted, maybe both. She laughed, a genuine sound that tightened something in his chest. I'm Lena, by the way. I know, the word almost slipped out, but he caught himself just in time. I mean, nice to meet you, Ethan. They shook hands, and the contact sent a quiet shock through him. Her palm was warm, slightly rough hands that worked, that endured. So, Ethan, she said, pulling her hand back, what do you do? He considered lying. He was tired of introductions changing once people knew his name. I work in business. She nodded thoughtfully. That sounds vague enough to hide a lot of stress. You have no idea. She leaned against the chair across from him, lowering her voice. You know, I used to think adults had everything figured out. Turns out we're all just improvising. That might be the most honest thing I've heard all week. Her smile softened. Rough week? Rough life, he corrected, then surprised himself by adding, but moments like this help. Something shifted in her expression, curiosity mixed with caution. Moments like coffee? Moments like meeting someone unexpectedly. She looked away, suddenly shy. Yeah, unexpected can be complicated. Before he could respond, a sharp voice called her name from the counter. Lena, table 6 needs their bill. Coming, she replied, then glanced back at Ethan. Duty calls. I'll be here, he said, unsure why he felt the need to promise that the next Thursday. She was there again, and the Thursday after that. Each time, she reminded him, just filling in. Each time. The lie felt thinner. They talked more about books, about cities they dreamed of visiting, about regrets they never named directly. Ethan listened as Lena mentioned her son in passing, the way her voice softened when she spoke about him. He noticed how she avoided talking about the boy's father. One evening, she arrived late, eyes tired, smile forced. "Long day?" Ethan asked gently. She exhaled. "Long life." He hesitated, then said quietly, "You don't have to be strong all the time." Her eyes flickered with something dangerously close to tears. She turned away quickly. "I do. But thank you." As weeks passed, Ethan found himself rearranging meetings, ignoring calls, just to sit at that corner table. His assistant noticed. The board noticed. But Ethan didn't care. For the first time in years, his heart was louder than his ambition. One night, as Lena wiped down his table after closing, she finally asked, "Why do you really come here, Ethan?" He met her gaze, unflinching. "Because you're here." Silence wrapped around them. She swallowed. "You don't know me. I'd like to." She shook her head slowly. "Men who say that usually leave when they do." Ethan stood, closing the distance between them. "I'm not like most men." She laughed bitterly. "Everyone says that." "Then let me prove it," he said. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen, her expression changing instantly. "I have to go. Is everything okay?" "My son," she said, already grabbing her bag. "He needs me." "Let me drive you," Ethan offered without thinking. She froze. "You don't have to. I want to." After a moment, she nodded as they stepped outside into the cool night air. Lena had no idea that the man walking beside her owned half the city skyline. And Ethan knew that when the truth finally came out, it could destroy everything they were quietly building. But for now, as she buckled her seatbelt and whispered, "Thank you," he allowed himself one dangerous thought. For the first time, he wasn't just an admirer in the shadows, and this was only the beginning. The car ride was quiet at first, the kind of silence that wasn't awkward but heavy with things unsaid. Streetlights slid past the windows, painting brief patterns across Lena's face. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, but his mind was racing. He couldn't remember the last time he had driven someone himself. Normally there was a driver, a schedule, a destination already decided. Tonight felt different and guarded, human. "Thank you for this," Lena said finally, breaking the silence. "I usually take the bus?" "I don't mind," Ethan replied. "Where am I heading?" She gave him an address, modest, a little too far from the cafe to be convenient. He noticed how she hesitated before saying it, as if apologizing for the distance her life occupied from his. Even though she didn't yet know how vast that distance truly was, they pulled up in front of a small apartment building. A single light glowed in one of the windows upstairs. "That's me," she said, already unbuckling her seatbelt. "Is he okay?" Ethan asked. She paused. "He had a bad dream." "He gets those sometimes? Does he want company?" The question slipped out before Ethan could stop it. Lena smiled faintly. "He's already asleep again. But thank you for asking." She opened the door, then hesitated. "I'll see you next Thursday." "If you're filling in," he said lightly. She laughed softly. "If I'm filling in?" As she walked toward the building, Ethan watched until the door closed behind her. Only then did he exhale, resting his forehead briefly against the steering wheel. He had negotiated billion-dollar mergers without breaking a sweat. But this scared him. The next weeks deepened everything. Lena became a constant in his life, though neither of them dared call it that. They shared late conversations after closing, sometimes sitting on overturned crates behind the cafe, sharing fries and stories under the hum of a flickering street lamp. She told him about her son, Noah, 5 years old, curious, stubborn, afraid of thunderstorms. She didn't say much about how she became a single mother, and Ethan never pushed. He had learned long ago that some truths needed space before they could breathe. One night, she admitted, "I used to write every day, poems, short stories. I thought I'd publish something before I turned 30. And now?" Ethan asked. Now I write grocery lists, she said with a shrug. Life had other plans. Plans can change, he said. She looked at him, really looked, as if trying to decide whether to believe him. You always sound so sure. I've learned that certainty is often just courage pretending. She smiled at that, but there was sadness in her eyes. You talk like someone who's already won. Ethan said nothing. If she knew how hollow winning could feel, she might not say that. The truth began to press in on him. Phone calls he took outside. Assistants who showed up unexpectedly. Headlines that appeared on screens behind the cafe counter. Lena noticed, of course. She wasn't naive. One evening, she crossed her arms and said, "You're not just business, are you?" Ethan held her gaze. "Does it matter?" "It might," she replied quietly. "People with power usually don't sit in cafes falling for waitresses." The word falling lingered between them, terrifying and undeniable. "I'm not here because of power," he said. "I'm here because of you." She shook her head slowly. "I don't want to be someone's escape." "You're not," he said. "You're my reason." She turned away, blinking rapidly. "I can't do this," she whispered. "I have a child. I can't afford illusions." "Neither can I," Ethan said, stepping closer. "Which is why I want the truth between us." "The truth is," she said, voice trembling, "I don't even know who you really are." The moment stretched. Fragile as glass dot before he could answer, the cafe door burst open. 2 men in tailored suits stepped inside. Scanning the room with practiced efficiency. "Mr. Cross," one of them said, relief flooding his tone. "We've been trying to reach you." The world stopped. Lena turned slowly, her eyes moving from the men to Ethan. "Mr. Cross?" Ethan closed his eyes briefly, then opened them. There was no point hiding now. "Lena, you're Ethan Cross?" She interrupted, her voice barely audible. "The CEO?" "Yes." The word landed like a final verdict, her face drained of color. "All this time." "I never lied to you," he said quickly. "I just didn't tell you everything." She laughed, sharp and wounded. "That's the same thing." "It's not," he insisted. "I was afraid." "Of what?" She demanded. "That I'd treat you differently? Or that you'd realize I'm not from your world?" She untied her apron with trembling fingers. I knew this was too good to be real. "Lena, please," Ethan said, reaching for her. She stepped back. "Don't." The men shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware they were intruding on something deeply personal. "I need to think," Lena said, grabbing her bag. "About all of it." "Let me explain," Ethan pleaded. "Not tonight," she said. "Tonight, I need to remember who I am." She walked out, leaving Ethan standing in the cafe that suddenly felt painfully empty. Days passed with no word. Ethan sent messages he never expected replies to. He drafted explanations he never sent. He canceled meetings, ignored calls, drove past her building more times than he cared to admit. Lena, meanwhile, tried to rebuild the walls she had let down. She focused on Noah, on routines, on survival. But at night, when the apartment was quiet, her thoughts betrayed her. She remembered the way Ethan listened. The way he saw her, not as a charity case or a complication, but as someone worth choosing. One rainy afternoon, there was a knock at her door. She opened it to find Ethan standing there, soaked, hair plastered to his forehead, eyes raw with something dangerously close to desperation. "I'm not here as a CEO," he said before she could speak. "I left my title in the car." She hesitated, then stepped aside. Noah peeked out from behind her leg. "Who's that?" Ethan crouched to Noah's level. "I'm Ethan. Your mom makes the best hot chocolate I've ever had." Noah considered him seriously, then nodded. "Okay." Lena couldn't help but smile. After Noah went to his room, Ethan finally spoke. "I should have told you sooner." "Yes," Lena said. "You should have. But everything I felt was real," he continued. "Every moment. Every word." She crossed her arms. "You live in a world I can't follow." "You don't have to follow," he said. "Just walk beside me. At your pace." She studied him for a long moment. "And when the world looks at me and sees nothing but a single mom?" And I'll look louder, he said. I'll make sure they see what I see. Tears slid down her cheeks despite her best efforts. I'm scared. So am I, Ethan admitted. But I'd rather be scared with you than empty without you. Silence fell again, softer this time. Finally, Lena nodded once. Slow, she said. We go slow? Ethan smiled, relief washing over his features. As slow as you need. From the hallway, Noah's voice called out, Mom? Can he stay for dinner? Lena laughed through her tears, and for the first time, she allowed herself to believe that maybe, just maybe, this wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning of something braver.